News of the day.
Mr. Zimmerman, have you made a decision as to whether or not you want to testify in this case?
With values that never die.
There are certainly a lot of controversies or scandals brewing right now when it comes to the Obama administration.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Dealing with the federal government is not always high-tech, and it's not always user-friendly.
The stories that matter.
This is a massive escalation in the tension here in Egypt.
The issues that count.
I don't know why the media tries to make this into a sensation. We have never hidden the fact that we supply Syria with weapons.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
He's got the red, white, blue flying high on the farm. Semper Fi tattooed on his left arm. Spend a little more in a store for a tag and a bag of
So, what am I not supposed to have an opinion? Should I keep quiet just because I'm a woman? Call me a bitch because I speak what's on my mind.
Well, you know who just announced her bid to be the first female president of the United States of America. That's Hillary Clinton has officially launched her campaign. She's been running for over 2 decades. We know that. We know that's been her grand ambition. At last, it's official. She is going to try to be the first female president of the United States if she secures the Democratic nomination. Well, welcome to the broadcast, everybody, on a historic broadcast with this latest announcement, which we all knew was coming. It's good to be back home. I was away last week. I was actually on 2 back-to-back trips. Montreal for Easter, and then I had the brilliant idea to take my 2 children, put them in the car, and drive from Boston to Philadelphia. MapQuest says that's a 5-hour drive, and I thought, that's going to be great because my best friend from Rome was in town and she was in D.C., so she was going to drive a couple of hours to meet me in Philadelphia so that it would be easier. Well, MapQuest doesn't factor in traffic, doesn't factor in 2 little kids who need constant stopping, doesn't factor in trying to get through all the road work in Connecticut and the George Washington Bridge. So it basically took me 7.5 hours to get there. And you're not going to believe it. It took me 12 hours to get back home. But I have to say it was all worth it because I did spend some great quality time with my bestie. Anyways, I'm back and want to discuss the news of the week. The news of the week, Hillary Clinton making this presidential run. And how did she do it? She did it with a YouTube video. This video is actually inefficient, if you ask me. That's the word I would describe. And that's the word I would describe about her. You know, for this monologue, I want to put aside all the scandals that she's been involved with. The scandals that she was involved in with Bill Clinton. The scandals that she helped Bill Clinton bury, especially when it came to women. And all her own recent scandals, the scandals of her own making, her role in Benghazi, and everything that we've learned since she left office, the email scandal, the Clinton Foundation scandal. Just for 1 minute, I want to put that aside. And I want to illustrate just how inefficient this woman is. When I actually went online, because I didn't have the chance to hear this announcement I went online. I wanted to see it. I didn't see it on the news. I wanted to see it online. When I sat there and I clicked on it, for the first 20 seconds, I thought, you know, that's the section where there's an ad and then you get the chance to skip the ad and you actually go to the clip. That's how ineffective I thought this. I thought this was some kind of an ad for something else. You'll see what I mean. Roll it.
I'm getting ready for a lot of things. A lot of things.
It's spring, so we're starting to get the gardens ready, and my tomatoes are legendary here in my own neighborhood.
My daughter is about to start kindergarten next year, and so we're moving just so she can belong to a better school.
Mi hermano y yo estamos empezando un primer negocio.
Vaya. After 5 years of raising my children, I am now going back to work.
Every day we're trying to get more ready and more prepared.
The baby boy.
coming your way.
Right now I'm applying for jobs. It's a look into what the real world will look like after college.
I'm getting married this summer to someone I really care about.
I'm gonna be in a play and I'm gonna be in a fish costume. From little tiny fishes.
I'm getting ready to retire soon. Retirement means reinventing yourself in many ways.
Well, we've been doing a lot of home renovations.
But most importantly, we really just want to teach our dog to quit eating the trash.
And so we have high hopes for 2015 that that's going to happen.
I've started a new career recently. This is a fifth-generation company, which means a lot to me. This country was founded on hard work, and it really feels good to be a part of that.
Okay, now, if I hadn't told you that this is a clip about Hillary Clinton launching her political bet, what would you have thought? Literally, when I clicked on YouTube for a while, I was like, okay, when is the clip of Hillary going to start? What is this? Is this if you think about what we just heard, somebody wanting to, put tomatoes in their garden, is this like a sauce commercial? Then we heard about starting kindergarten. For a moment, I thought, is this a commercial about, those commercials you see, like the child's going to start kindergarten and this is the detergent you need to keep the child's clothes clean. Then you see a clip about the money for the new store. After a while, I started to see a trend. And okay, this is about starting something new. Is this a car commercial? Literally, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, how come where's the skip ad button? Well, the skip ad button never came. Because what you see is all these people talking about random things. And the only thing that connects them, apart from the fact that you've got women, children, Hispanics, and gays, all of the expected constituencies of the Democratic Party, apart from that, the only thing that connects them is that they're starting something new. And so then at that point, I realized, this has got to be Hillary's so-called brilliant idea to launch her campaign because she thinks this is new and refreshing, when instead she made the first mistake of communication. And let me tell you this, when I was an editorial writer in the newsroom, the first thing you do when you put pen to paper is, what's your lead? What is the central argument that you're about to make? That's the first sentence that you write. When I was lecturing to my students about how to write, how to communicate, I would emphasize, I want to see a strong lead sentence for every paragraph. But more important, I want to see the thematic thrust, the theme of your paper right there in that introductory paragraph. Well, Hillary Clinton in this video, she makes error 101 in communication. First, state your thesis. First, state the lead. She doesn't do it. She does an elementary mistake where she backs into the lead. Stupid is as stupid does. Now, Hillary comes on the YouTube clip. Roll it.
I'm getting ready to do something too. I'm running for president. Americans have fought their way back from tough economic times, but the deck is still stacked in favor of those at the top. Everyday Americans need a champion, and I want to be that champion. So you can do more than just get by. You can get ahead and stay ahead, because when families are strong, America is strong. So I'm hitting the road to earn your vote, because it's your time, and I hope you'll join me on this journey.
When you hear that, that could almost be the pitch for some kind of a retirement savings account or a banking commercial of some kind. It's absolutely preposterous. So she says she's trying to show that, she relates to the common person. So she's getting ready to do something too. Yeah. Like the boy that's about to start kindergarten is the same thing as this celebrity, this multi-million-dollar celebrity about to launch a presidential run. And guess what the big lie of this is, apart from what I just said? The big lie is all those people, most of them were starting something that they had never done before. A new business, their first, a new child, the first time a child goes to kindergarten, a woman going back on the job for the first time after she's had children. It was the first time they were doing it. But in Hillary's case, it's the second time, you stupid! So the metaphor doesn't even work. It's the second time she runs for the highest office in the land, not the first. So on the two basic levels, trying to connect her story with that of the people, it's a lie. Trying to say that it's the first time, it's a lie. It's the second time, so it's not new for her. And then, she talks about, well, these people are still struggling, and the people at the top are doing well, herself being the 1%. Let that go, that she's part of the 1%. But she now wants to be a champion for all these people so that they can get ahead. And I'm sitting there saying, well, I'm sorry. You haven't explained, you haven't answered one fundamental question. You accepted, approved, and supported all of Barack Obama's economic policies. So if they haven't worked until now, what will you do that's going to be any different? Essentially, the biggest problem that Hillary Clinton has is she doesn't know how to distinguish herself from Barack Obama. She can't attack him because she's going to alienate the base. And she can't simply distance herself totally from everything he did because she was part of what he did. So where does she go? She's got no room. She's got nowhere to go. She's boxed herself in politically. The one card she can play is to talk about the wonderful things that Bill Clinton did. But then that would be going backwards, going back to the past and trying to take credit for what her husband did. So what's this campaign really going to amount to? It's going to amount to the fact, as many of the insiders working on the campaign have said, it's going to amount to the fact that they are going to tout the gender card. They're going to go low, way low. In 2008, Hillary Clinton wanted to take the high road. She didn't want to mention the fact that she's a woman. She wanted it to be about the issues. Well, not so fast. She saw that with Barack Obama, his race and the historic meaning of his election played a key role in helping him to win. And she wants to do the same thing. Empty. The strategy is empty. The candidacy is empty. It is very, very difficult for a party to win 3 terms in a row. And with Obama's record and Hillary's scandals, this is going to be one huge, tall mountain to climb, as you can see. And one of the people that was asked for some assessment, well, how should the GOP answer Hillary Clinton's campaign? How should they fight her? Mike Huckabee was on This Week with George Stephanopoulos, and he was asked point blank, should the GOP mention all the scandals, especially the Bill Clinton scandals? And this is Huckabee's take on what we should do. Roll it.
I don't think that's going to be necessary to get into a lot of personal attacks. I've never felt that that's really a wholesome way to enter politics. I think the issues are far more important than some of the personal issues, at least if you're a candidate running against another person. Now, you're not going to be able to stop the press. You're not going to be able to stop the bloggers. There are going to be plenty of people bringing that sort of stuff up, whether it's about her or about every other candidate. But some of us have got to decide that we would like to have a campaign about the future of America, more about the future of America and about working people who are getting busted in the gut by these economic policies that have left a lot of middle-class people working harder with less to show. And that really needs to be the focus, not on what someone once did years ago.
Well, Huckabee is a great communicator. I've said that many times. He speaks really well, and he can discuss policy and break it down using language that really appeals to all of us. When he uses a phrase like busted in the guts, that's how a lot of people feel. People can relate to that kind of language. He's basically arguing, let's take the high road. We can defeat her simply by talking straight about where the economy really is, which you didn't see in that YouTube clip because Hillary has to pretend that Barack Obama's policies worked at least 75% of the way, and she's going to get us over the hump and get it 100% perfect. That's the lie that she's peddling. In reality, somebody like Huckabee, who calls the economic situation as it is, people feel like they're kicked in the gut. That is the kind of language we want to hear from a future leader. But for now, all you're going to hear is that Hillary Clinton represents the future. Why? Because she's a woman, and this could be a historic race. What a poor rationale to vote for a person. This is Dr. Grace, upholding values that are never going to die.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Well, guess who's going in? Another Republican candidate has announced that he is going to join the fray and try to win the nomination. Senator Marco Rubio said this week he will compete. He's going in. And he joins two other Republican senators who have done the same, Senator Ted Cruz and Senator Rand Paul. So Marco Rubio makes three on the Republican side, and they're all first-term senators. He, unlike Hillary Clinton, at least did it right. He delivered a speech, and therein he introduced himself, introduced his biography, and he's already started to talk about the issues and about what he wants to do for the country. So this junior senator has done his launch better than the senior expert on politics, Hillary Clinton herself, the one who's been in it for decades in so many different positions. And I have to say, one of the lines that is really catching fire from Marco Rubio is how he described both Hillary Clinton and also suggesting the same about Jeb Bush. Listen to this.
Now, just yesterday, a leader from yesterday began a campaign for president by promising to take us back to yesterday. Yesterday is over. And we're never going back.
Well, let's not go back with a Hillary Clinton presidency. But you know what? Hillary Clinton, as I said previously, has yet to find the rationale. Why is she running? What is she going to do different? And if you think about for a moment how already we're seeing her as a dinosaur, as somebody associated with everything that has gone wrong in the past rather than anything positive about the past. And you compare her persona, her image to Bill Clinton. Remember when Bill Clinton came on the scene? He even had a fantastic, he and Al Gore, when they were running, they had a fantastic campaign song. And guess what that campaign song was all about? It wasn't about the past. It wasn't about yesterday. It was about tomorrow. Remember this? You know, I remember being dismayed when Bill Clinton won. But when that song came on, it put me in a good mood regardless of the fact. That's good marketing. That's good branding. That's something that Hillary Clinton's going to have a very, very hard time doing. Anyway, so we give Marco Rubio credit for tagging her as the woman of yesterday with a very well-crafted line. But that's pretty much where my praise for Rubio ends. I don't like this guy. I don't support him. Of the 3 senators who are running, he is my least favorite by far, because I do not think he is a man of principle. He is another creature of Washington. Yes, that's what I said. Marco Rubio has become a creature of Washington, D.C. He was a Tea Party favorite, a darling when he came on the scene in 2010. And now he's just another one of them. He's sold out. He's slippery. He can't be trusted. And how do I know that? Well, one of the major dead giveaways, one of several, but the biggest, was when in 2012, he was still the darling of the party. And he had his eye on the prize. He had his eye on becoming the next GOP nominee and the first Hispanic president of this country. And he wanted to get the support of the Wall Street Journal and so many pundits who were saying that we needed to do a better job reaching out to minorities. That's why Romney had lost in 2012. And especially we needed to do a better job courting Hispanics. So what did Rubio do? He sold out a core Republican value to not give amnesty. And day after day, he worked on the airwaves and he worked with a gang in the Senate to try to put forward a quote-unquote comprehensive immigration reform proposal, otherwise known as amnesty. And he was trying to convince us that it was anything but amnesty. But he was riding high. He was bold. He was going to do whatever it took. The consequences be damned. And I want you to listen carefully. This is an excerpt that took place on Fox and Friends, June of 2013, where radio host Laura Ingraham really called him to task on his sellout approach to immigration. Listen.
Force. They know that when Chuck Schumer, Dick Durbin, and Bob Menendez are giddy over the passage of a bill, Republicans, conservatives, most people in the middle class who are seeing their wages stagnate or go down have something to worry about. So they're looking to you for leadership, Senator Rubio, and I can tell you from my radio listeners, they think it's time to stop dividing the Republican Party on this issue with all your good intentions, and I know you have them. You're a terrific person. But people want us to focus on jobs, the economy, and raising the middle class lifestyle and the wages here in this country before we start tackling an issue with this comprehensive approach, which I think we've seen from Janet Napolitano getting all this discretion, is a very, very tricky business.
Well, I think there's agreement about the discretion part, and that's what we're working on addressing. As far as immigration and the economy is concerned, it actually is linked to the economy. If you look at our legal immigration system, if we didn't have a single illegal immigrant, we'd still have to reform our legal immigration system because it is related to our business and our ability
do that separately.
Well, the problem is that they're all interrelated. If you look at one of the drivers of illegal immigration is that we don't have a legal immigration system that works, for example, for temporary or guest workers in the agricultural sector as an example.
It's not a top priority for this country.
Well, you know, there he was dancing and dancing and dancing. He was even going to argue that you had to do it even for the good of the economy. It had to be done. It was a pressing priority. And Laura Ingraham was calling him to task. Stop dividing the party on this issue. It's not a priority for us. And there he was doing the dance because he thought ultimately the House was going to pass the bill that the Senate had passed. And guess what? Instead, the House didn't even want to touch it because there was a grassroots revolt and he got stung. And then he had an hallelujah moment. Uh-oh, I'm not going to be the darling of the party. You know what? Better shift my position back to what it was. And at CPAC this year, he spoke with Hannity. And you know, when somebody is a turncoat and is slippery, they like to say, quote unquote, that they learned from their mistakes. And we know the truth, Rubio. You didn't learn from your mistakes. What you did was you were angling and it backfired. And now you've got to reposition yourself. Listen to him trying to dance again, but in the opposite direction now with Hannity at CPAC in 2015.
You have 10 or 12 million people in this country, many of whom have lived here for longer than a decade, have not otherwise violated our laws other than the immigration laws. I get all that. But you can't even begin to have what I've learned is you can't even have a conversation about that until people believe and know, not just believe, but it's proven to them that future illegal immigration will be controlled. You can't just tell people we're going to secure the border, we're going to put E-Verify. You have to do it. They have to see it. They have to see it working. And then they're going to have a reasonable conversation with you about the other parts. But they don't even want to talk about that until that's done first. And what's happened over the last 2 years, the migratory crisis this summer, the 2 executive orders, that's now more true than it's ever been.
You know, he learned that recently. No, I'm sorry, Rubio. We've been saying that since 2008. We've been shouting it since 2008. You didn't just learn that. You didn't learn that in 2015. You knew it back then. You didn't care. You were angling. And it backfired. And you've been exposed because the one thing we don't want is, Marco, I'll be anything you want me to be, Rubio. That's disgusting to us, the voters. And it gets worse. So the Wall Street Journal wrote a report, and now they're looking at Rubio's tax plan. So like I said, I give him credit. At least he has a tax plan out. But you know what Rubio wants to do? His tax plan consists of, there are 7 rates now. He wants to reduce those to just 2 rates. So let's simplify the tax code. And the highest tax rate is going to be paying 35% of income for those making more than $75,000. So this is his brilliant plan. If you're making more than $75,000, you're going to pay 35% of that. You're going to give 35% of that to the government. You know, Marco Rubio, 35% is really high. And somebody making $75,000 having to pay 35%, that's a lot of money. I don't think you can present yourself as the champion of the middle class with a plan like this. And he admits that a plan like this is actually in the short term going to cause a revenue shortfall. But he believes it's going to cause in the long term a lot of economic growth. And he's going to try to sell this plan as the way to grow the economy. And then once the growth occurs, the budget will be balanced. What did I say? A creature of Washington. Because the one thing he doesn't want to talk about is cuts. Because you're not going to get anywhere unless you start cutting. And again, you see what a coward he is. That's in black and white now. His cowardly tax plan. Because he doesn't want to upset anybody. He wants to take on the mantle of Reagan as somebody that can bring about growth, but he doesn't want to do any of the hard work that this time moment requires, that this generation needs. We need the deficit cut. We need our budgets balanced. It's going to take somebody tough to do that. He's not tough. He wants to be liked. That's his problem. And, you know, he also wants to give children a $2,500 tax credit. Oh, I'm starting to like you already, Marco Rubio. You're compassionate to the children. You know what the Wall Street Journal said about that? He's basically going to try to compete with Hillary Clinton in terms of who's going to redistribute wealth better. Who's going to redistribute our wealth better? Is it going to be the Hispanic Marco Rubio or the lady Hillary Clinton? We don't want you to compete with the Democrats in redistributing wealth, in growing government. We want leaders that stand for something completely different. And I'm sorry, Marco Rubio, you are too weak. You are too cowardly. You are too slippery to be anybody that I can support. In fact, maybe you should consider running as Hillary Clinton's VP. that would be a truly historic ticket. The woman and the Hispanic, and that's where you belong, as slippery as she is. And then there's another point I want to raise, because to be honest with you, it is really getting on my nerves. You have 3 first-term senators who are running for the GOP. And look, I like Ted Cruz and I like Rand Paul, and they've got so much more character and brilliance than Marco Rubio. But you know what? All 3 are the same in this sense. You haven't finished the job that the American people entrusted you to do, which was to be a senator. No sooner, but all 3 of you now, no sooner did all 3 of you get elected, we could see it, all of us. You were vying to run. And frankly, that disappoints me. You know, on This Week, Mike Huckabee was asked that question. What does he think about people who hold a current office and they start running for something else? Is that right? I'm not talking about is it legal. I'm just saying, is it right? And listen to Huckabee's response. Roll it.
You wrote in your book that people shouldn't be able to hold office and run for another office at the same time. So does that mean the 3 senators who look like they're in the race right now, Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, and Marco Rubio getting in tomorrow, you think they should resign their offices?
Well, it's ultimately up to them. But, George, how do you do an office, do your job if you never show up? And why should taxpayers be on the hook to pay people for a job they're not doing and essentially subsidize their campaign with federal taxpayer dollars? Guys like me, guys like Rick Perry, others who have left office, we're not going to be able to live off the taxpayers. I was a governor 10 and a half years. I can tell you this, as a governor, that's a full-time job. It's a 24/7, 365 job. How do you say I'm going to run for president full-time and I'm also going to serve, whether it's a governor or a senator or a congressman? I just don't know how a person can pull that off. And if you want a different job, I know this, during the time that I worked for Roger Ailes over at Fox, if I had been consistently going over to ABC and asking you guys for a job and never showed up at work at Fox, I don't think Roger would have kept me on the payroll. I'm pretty sure he would have turned me loose, as he should have. So I just believe that people, if they want a new job, be honest about it and say, this one isn't satisfying to me. I really don't want this one anymore. I'm going to resign, and I'll go after the job that I really want, which is President of the United States.
Bingo. And all 3 of these men, they're very young. They've got plenty of time. What is their hurry? What is the rush? And what unique qualifications do they have that no other person in the GOP has? They can't answer that question honestly and say that really they have something to contribute that nobody, they can't answer that question. A lot of it is pure personal ambition. They saw Barack Obama do it, and they too want to be known as young people who make it all the way to the top of the ticket. That's ego first instead of country first. I'm sorry, it leaves a sour taste in my mouth. What I see in those 3 guys, even though 2 of the 3 I like, is too much of this me generation, this fame generation, this power-hungry, greedy, impatient generation. It leaves a sour taste in my mouth. Sorry to be so grumpy, folks, but I'm just calling it the way I see it. You're listening to Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at WorldTribune.com, and I'm always upholding values that are never, ever going to die.
I just want to lay in my bed. Don't feel like picking up my phone, so leave a message at the tone, 'cause today I swear I'm not doing anything.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Well, there is a man of will and of courage, of brains and brawn that is slowly starting to lead the world, and that is President Vladimir Putin. There's a piece in the New York Times, which I want to bring your attention to. President Vladimir Putin's dangerous moves. We've been talking about him for a while and how creepy he is. I've been saying that his unchecked aggression is going to lead to one thing, more aggression. And do you know how bad this is getting? He is now often threatening to resort to nuclear war if he has to. That's right. Recently, the Times of London reported that there was a meeting between Russian generals and American officials. And the Russians threatened, quote unquote, a spectrum of responses from nuclear to non-military if NATO moved more forces into the Baltic states. This kind of threat has been repeated a few times recently. Last month, the Russian ambassador to Denmark warned that Danish warships would be targets for Russia's nuclear weapons if Denmark continued to express its interest in joining NATO's missile defense system. And Putin also said that he was ready to bring nuclear weapons into a state of alert last year when Russia was invading the Crimea. So you see how bold and brazen he has become? He is willing to, quote unquote, go nuclear. You know, we use that expression as a metaphor, going nuclear. No, this guy's literally threatening to go nuclear. That's what the reset has led to. He's so cocky. He's so sure of himself. And he knows that he can intimidate the West. And it's not just Barack Obama who has been a coward at his feet. It's also the Europeans who have done nothing to stop him. And so now, guess what? Obama has struck a deal with the Iranians, quote unquote, a framework which he hopes Congress will approve of, which they won't. Congress has now said that they will be exercising oversight over that agreement. And no sooner has the ink been, made dry on that agreement that Russia proceeded with arming Iran with what is known as an S-300 missile defense system. This was a missile defense system that they were going to give Iran in 2007, but then there were so many objections from the White House that they stopped that. And now that the White House has signaled that Iran basically should be welcomed into the community of nations, what does this do? This opens the door for Russia to partner brazenly and openly with Iran. So they're going to sell them this missile defense system. And what is this going to do? This is going to make it harder for the Israelis to attack Iran. As Iran gets closer and closer to a nuclear bomb, this kind of defense system is going to make it that much harder for Israel to defend itself. And we see now that Putin is taking ownership. He's taking the lead wherever he can. As American power recedes, it is these bad actors who become more potent. Iran and Russia. And in fact, that piece in the New York Times says that there's indication now that he is planning another offensive to seize more territory in eastern Ukraine, despite the fact that a so-called truce was signed earlier this year. Essentially, Russia continues to be bellicose. And this is big, big trouble for the Israelis. Because America's support of Israel used to be a counterbalance to Russia's support of Iran. But now the entire Middle East is being turned inside out and upside down. So much so that the Israeli defense minister said that, in fact, the nuclear framework that Barack Obama signed is what gave the Russians the green light to sell this system to the Iranians, because they're not considered anymore the black sheep, the country that we're supposed to shun, the country that we're supposed to block. No. It's open season now in every direction. So we're saying that the Russians and the Iranians, their alliance will only get stronger. And you know what that means? That means that any of the so-called checks and balances that Barack Obama thinks are going to be exerted on the Iranians to prevent them from getting a nuclear bomb, this is all going to be destroyed by the Russians, who will flex their muscle at the United Nations to continue to support Iran. And the Israelis are rightly, deeply upset, because what they're seeing is allowing Iran to come out from the sanctions regime that was actually working. This is only going to embolden not just Iran, but all of their proxies, and all of their proxies that are determined to assault the Israelis. The sanctions for a while were at least they were biting into what Iran could do. But you imagine for a moment, if all of the sanctions are lifted, then the money that will flow into Iran is also going to flow into all of their proxies, making Israel's plight more and more precarious. It is astonishing to me that there could be any Democrat out there that could possibly, again, Jewish Democrat who could possibly vote for the Democrats going forward, given this colossal betrayal. And what we see is that as Putin gets more powerful and bolder, so does Iran. And all of this is to the utter detriment of Israel. Shame on you, President Barack Obama, for signaling that it's open season on Israel.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Shut up, shut up, just shut up, shut up, shut up, just shut up, shut up, shut up, just shut up, shut up, just shut up.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at WorldTribune.com, about to do the world-famous Just Shut Up segment. And you know, this week I can't resist clobbering Hillary Clinton once again because she fully deserves it. So we said earlier in the show that she's trying to be just like one of us, trying to be accessible. And you know what happens when she tries to be what she's not? She starts to lie. Listen to this clip.
We are, and I think Brendan's point's really an important one, we are turning down people who really want to work. I mean, they are here to work, and a lot of them now have children who are American citizens, and they are doing the best they can to try to make a good life for themselves and their families. And, you know, I think if we were to just go around this room, there are a lot of immigrant stories. You know, all my grandparents, you know, came over here, and you know, my grandfather went to work in a lace mill in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and worked there until he retired at 65. He started when he was a teenager and, you know, just kept going. So I sit here and I think, well, you're talking about the second, third generation. That's me. Right. That's you.
Yeah. So she's so not that far removed from her grandfather working in the lace mill. But the lie, folks, the lie here is that she said that all her grandparents were immigrants. And that's not true. The facts show otherwise. Her grandmother was actually born in this country. And she's been peddling this lie about her grandmother for years. Listen to another clip another clip of her also saying that her grandmother is an immigrant when that's not true.
My grandmother on my father's side, Hannah Jones Rodham, who, by the way, insisted on using all three names, despite what people in Scranton, Pennsylvania might have thought at the time, was one of those tough Methodist women who was never afraid to get her hands dirty. She traced her Methodism back to the Wesley brothers themselves, who converted her great-grandparents in the small coal mining villages of southern Wales. She immigrated with her family as a young girl to Scranton and went to work, very young, in a silk mill.
There you go. The lie once again. She was born in the United States of America. And when confronted with the facts, when reporters asked Hillary Clinton's campaign, I'm sorry, we have census reports here. Your grandmother, was born in this country, never immigrated from Wales. You know what her spokesperson said? Quote, her grandparents always spoke about the immigrant experience, and as a result, she has always thought of them as immigrants. We need a huge, big buzzer sound right here for big bunch of nonsense. There's a huge difference between being born in this country and being immigrants. And trust me, I know. My parents were immigrants from Italy to Canada. I know all about the immigrant experience. I myself immigrated from Canada to the United States. There is such a big difference between a native born and somebody who comes from another country in terms of the experiences that they have, especially early on. And for her to conflate all of that when she obviously knew the truth is part of what she does all the time. Lie to make herself seem like she's one of us, when all that it really shows is that she's not one of us. Not only in the sense that she's far removed from our lifestyle, but also she's so much apolitical that she's willing to lie about everything all the time, even when she really doesn't need to. It would have been enough to say that her grandfather was the immigrant. But no, if you're a politician, you got to make the story better. And to make it better, you got to lie. And you know what I recommend to Hillary Clinton? Just shut up.
Hey, let's get it now.
Well, what's in the grab bag this week? The segment where we talk about anything that strikes my fancy. And you know what is this week? Well, it was actually a little bit longer than this week, but I didn't get a chance to talk about it last week. Chris Wallace really put his foot in his mouth. And he was on the Mike Gallagher show. He was bantering with him. And his lips got a little bit too loose for their own good. And before you know it, you know what he did? He was calling a woman fat. And not just any woman, but Kelly Clarkson. Everyone knows you never, ever, ever call a woman fat. That's just being a gentleman 101. Let alone doing it on the air. Let alone doing it about a celebrity who is very well liked. Listen to this.
Like it would kill you. It would
Listen,
look like you would eat
don't fat shame me. You do a lot of fat shaming. That's the new phrase now, fat shaming. Have you seen Kelly Clarkson? You know the singer Kelly Clarkson? Holy cow, did she blow up.
Really? Do we want to talk about some of your friends?
Well, look at me. I got some weight issues. I can take a little bit of weight
talk
off.
About your friend?
Which friend? Who? No.
SF?
No. Goodbye. No, we will not talk about. What's wrong with you? All right. Check out Fox News Sunday. Chris Wallace. Check your local
You gotta
listing.
admit, that was pretty funny.
And the books are on their way. You sign them for our donors for our
Well, why are you?
foundation.
But Kelly Clarkson's got a lovely voice.
She's I love her singing, but man,
she could stay off the deep dish pizza for a little while. But she's got a great voice.
Well, she had a baby, but man,
Have you looked at yourself in the mirror?
I didn't have a baby. It looks like I ate the babies.
You know, Chris Wallace, never, ever, ever tell a woman to stay off the deep dish pizza. That's like saying to her face, you're fat. And no woman wants to hear that. And no woman deserves to hear that, especially not a woman who just gave birth. You try giving birth, sir. Well, it's not just Chris Wallace, and by the way, he did apologize afterwards, who's been attacking Kelly Clarkson for her weight. But there are others. And in fact, recently, there was a woman, a British personality by the name of Katie Hopkins. And this is what she tweeted. Jesus, what happened to Kelly Clarkson? Did she eat all her backing singers? Happily, I have a wide screen. So this is what this woman is tweeting. And the reason I'm talking about it in this segment is because despite all of this negativity, Kelly Clarkson has responded with grace and dignity. This is how she responded to Hopkins' Twitter. Quote, she's tweeted something nasty about me? That's because she doesn't know me. I'm awesome. It doesn't bother me. It's a free world. Say what you will. I've just never cared what people think. It's more if I'm happy and I'm confident and feeling good. That's always been my thing. And more so now since having a family. I don't seek out any other acceptance. End of quote. Well, you know, I really like the fact that she took the high road and said, well, she said something nasty about me. She didn't respond with a nasty rebuttal. She said, well, she just doesn't know me. I'm awesome. There, she maintains her dignity, maintains her sense of self, and doesn't get into a tit for tat, especially not about a sensitive topic like weight. You know, when women give birth, it's not just that they put on weight for the pregnancy, but many women put on weight just in parenting the children because it's so stressful in those early years. It's a very, very stressful time. It is truly deplorable that you have these folks bothering her about her weight when her weight it's nobody's business. It's her business. So there's new words that are creeping up into our language like fat shaming. I like that term, fat shaming. Nobody should do that. And there's another term that's gaining currency, weight bullying, making people feel bad for either being too fat or too skinny. You know what? Somebody's weight is their business. Trust me, when people put on weight, they know it. They know what they need to do. When people lose weight and it's too much of a weight loss, they know it. They know if it's healthy or not. Extend the courtesy and grace to recognize that a lot of time, great movements in weight mean that something is going on in that person's life. Maybe they're under stress. Maybe what they really need is, hey, everything okay? Don't mention their weight, but give a helping hand if you can, or sympathetic ear. And I've got to say, a big mea culpa to me, I've been insensitive on weight issues a couple of times. And that's why I know to do better. One time I was at a party and there was a woman, you know, that was rather large and she was doing a lot of work and she seemed to be doing all the work. And at one point I turned to her and I said, oh, why are you working so hard? You shouldn't be working so hard in your condition. You see, I thought she was pregnant. And I kept looking at her and looking around saying why nobody's helping her. And I thought I was being kind and compassionate. And I said, you shouldn't be working so hard in your condition. And she turned to me and said, what condition is that? I said, are you not pregnant? No. So I put my foot in my mouth big time. And another time, I put my foot in my mouth in the opposite direction. I was at a wedding, and one of my friends, who is always very thin, showed up even thinner. And I blurted out, "Could you possibly get any thinner?" And I thought it was like a compliment. Well, years later, she told me that when I said that, it hurt her profoundly because she's always struggled to put on weight. And how could I be so insensitive? So here I am, pleading guilty to weight bullying. I've learned my lesson, and I hope the men out there especially know never, ever, ever to tell a woman to lay off the deep dish pizza. You're listening to Dr. Grace, upholding values that never die.
With the stars and stripes and the eagle flies.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.